All right, I am stoked today because I'm Joshua Lisec and I am with Sarah Beth Yoga. Sarah Beth is a wife, a mother, a renowned yoga teacher. We're one of the largest YouTube channels. She has an audience in the millions that's global. She has a Sarah Beth Yoga community and app where people who are on this path, who are on this journey of integrating yoga into not just their wellness journey, but all aspects of their life, come and hang out. We're here today to talk about her book on yoga, but it's about so much more than yoga. It's called Trauma Alchemy. Rather interesting title we can dig into today. Sarah Beth, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Joshua?
I am pretty dandy. Excited to chat with you about Trauma Alchemy, this book, and we're going to talk a little behind the scenes of how this book came to be. But I would like first to rewind real quick to your own yoga journey, because I think the context of the book makes the most sense when people understand what yoga has done for you personally, and that it's for not just you, but for the people who are in your audience who subscribe to Sarah Beth Yoga, both in the community on YouTube and elsewhere. It's more than just, oh, okay, this is a great way to kind of stay physically healthy. It's so much more than that. Can you tell us a little bit about what was it that drew you to yoga in the first place and ultimately inspired you to become a teacher?
Yeah, so I tell this story in depth at the beginning of the book, but just for right here, right now, I got into yoga when I was much younger, in my teen years, and I knew that I needed something to manage stress. I didn't know at the time that I was living through what I now look back at as childhood trauma. But I did know that I was stressed out and I did not know how to manage that properly. So I looked at yoga as an opportunity. And that's what I ended up finding in yoga. Even though I wasn't very good at it, I felt humbled and humiliated and very inflexible. But I stuck to it because there was something about it that just made me feel good. I felt calm. I felt bliss. And every time I went back, I would tap back into that feeling. And over the years, I realized that yoga was helping me not just feel good in the moment, but it was helping me kind of unwind and open up what was causing some of that stress in the first place. And I was able to use yoga as a vehicle for healing.
That is wonderful. And that's a good little segue into this concept of trauma alchemy, and how what you've discovered is that the yoga practice maps well onto doing the inner work of healing, of overcoming the past traumas and some of the triggers and the anxieties and fears. And so what it seems like you've identified is that people are drawn to yoga for more than just, well, I'd like to be more flexible and kind of have some sort of an exercise I can do relatively easily. It's more than that. It's an inner healing, it's mental, it's emotional, and it is returning to a place of wholeness. And when we first talked about this book, the concept of alchemy came up because it's a transmutation of something that's not so great into something that is beautiful and that is wonderful. And it's this concept that your trauma can, and the anxieties and experiences and even dark memories can, through the process of yoga, become what heals people. What has been the reception that you've seen from your audience and from readers to that rather, let's say, innovative concept?
Yeah, so the people that are reading my book right now are finding what I found a long time ago, which was that you can use yoga as a vehicle for healing. That this modality that you've been doing for so long to feel good can actually be an opportunity to break down walls and boundaries and all of these different guards that you've built throughout your life in a safe space that is your yoga mat. I mean, you create your own safe space within your practice. And so they're finding that they want to do this one thing, like they want to heal, they want to go and do their inner work, but they don't have a space for it or a guide for it. They're not really sure how. I mean, yes, you can call a therapist. And as I mentioned in the book, therapy is a really great option and a great supplement as well. But yoga can be that opportunity. And let me break that down for you on how exactly you can do that in a step by step route path.
And speaking of step by step, when we first had conversations about what the book could be, the direction of the book and the structure, and we began to talk through some of the lessons, practical lessons that you've learned both on and off the mat, we realized that this process of this inner work healing journey that people can experience, it maps 1-to-1 on the stages of an actual yoga session, frankly. And so the chapters are designed from getting on the mat to all the way down through the ladder poses, and every single, let's say, major pose or set of breaths. You talk about some of the Sanskrit and the meaning behind that, but there's specific both on and off mat exercises that people can do for the physical release as well as the mental and the emotional. What are some of the results that people are sharing with you about what they're observing as they're following the book step by step?
I think people are thrilled with the concept that the stages of trauma alchemy align with the stages of a yoga practice because there's a familiarity to it. And it also helps them to warm up to even the idea of doing this work, knowing that they're not going to jump into the deep end. They're not going to jump on their mat and just go straight into some warrior poses. Trust the process. You'll warm up to it. You'll get ready to get into the hard stuff when you're ready for it. And then before you know it, you're in that cool down period and you're like, wow, I did that. And you can really soak it in. And a lot of people are talking about how they're having these huge breakthrough moments, but it was in that safe space. It was in that place where they were ready for it. They felt confident going through it. And they were able to do their inner work and their self work with that guidance, and stuff that they had been holding on to for a really long time. They now have a new perspective on. It's like breakthroughs that people are experiencing as they work through the book.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And it seems like when we look at books that are about yoga, we were chatting a little bit about this before the recording here. When we look at books that are usually about yoga, they're either memoir or autobiography, and just kind of like the person's story, and they'll have some suggestions and whatnot, maybe some illustrations. But why would you do that when you could just pull up a video and do it yourself, right? And at the same time, there are books that talk about doing the inner work of that mental, emotional, and spiritual cleansing. And often the negative and critical feedback on those books is that they are a smattering of tactics and tips, and well, you could try this, you could try this, and there's not necessarily a cohesiveness. There's not a journey. There's not a path. And one of the things that I talk about in my own book is documenting the step-by-step with no skipped path or journey from you are here to now you're there, and following through that and bringing people to that point. And that's why I'm so excited about promoting your book, is because it offers what neither of those two categories of existing books, the yoga books and the indie workbooks, have been able to successfully do. But if we rewind a little bit, what was it that initially made you come to the conclusion you needed a book, that you wanted a book?
I wanted to tell my story. So I did want that biography essence of it. I wanted to finally tell my story and get it all out there, especially because I had just gone through this huge healing process with childhood trauma. And I, in that process, learned a lot of lessons that I wanted to inject into telling my story. So I didn't want to just tell my story and walk away. I wanted to tell my story and then the lessons that I learned from that story and how I became who I am today with that story in mind. I mean, I could have gone in any direction considering my childhood trauma, and I could have not been living this beautiful, amazing life, but I credit the strength and the gratitude and the perspective that I have now to the lessons that I learned along the way because of what I experienced back then. And I wanted to embody all of that into a book, but I love how it came together, that not only did it do all of that, told the story, told the lessons, told you how I am who I am today, but it injected it into the teaching of yoga. And that's when I could really shine as a yoga teacher too, to say, these are the lessons, and this is how you can apply it to your yoga practice. This is how you can really reconsider these different phases of a yoga practice, so that even when you're not doing trauma alchemy work, but you're doing a regular yoga sequence, you can rethink how the core section of a class is so hard and so challenging. And why is my teacher trying to beat me up? And maybe rethink of it as a way to bring some play into your practice, to bring some lightness into your practice, to think about your inner child, the 8-year-old version of you who's like, I want to try a handstand, or how you can reconsider that the burn you're feeling and you're trying to run away from might be an opportunity for you to burn the dead wood of emotional tension that you've been holding on to for so long. And I could go on and on about the different parts of the yoga practice, but again, that is defined thoroughly in the book.
Wonderful. Now, what is the purpose of your, besides telling the story? A book can serve multiple purposes. What is the function of your book, Trauma Alchemy, inside of your business? Because you've got this community, you've got this app, and you have this fantastic funnel with all of the YouTube content and Instagram following and whatever else. But where does the book fit in from a business strategy perspective?
That's a great question. So the book is kind of a pivot point for me in business. I don't want to make yoga videos on YouTube forever. I want to have more depth to what I'm creating, and I want to have more impact, and it not necessarily like wide and globally. I want to have more impact individually. And I want to know that my story and the life that I lived is benefiting others in some way. And so I always knew that I wanted to, at some point, go into the healing world. I wanted to help with domestic violence or human sex trafficking. I wanted to, and I will get into like the psychedelic healing world, especially with my experience in psychedelic healing too. So looking at what I was interested in, which was healing and helping, and what I was doing, which was teaching yoga, how could I pivot so that someday I can start to work more towards that healing and helping? And the book for me was that pivot, because it was an opportunity for me to tell everyone, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then now that the book is out there and I'm talking about healing and I'm talking about trauma, I feel ready to start to take those next steps. And one of the steps in the future will be a ketamine assisted psychotherapy. So that's CAP. That means that you're going to have a therapist there to help you with a clinical dose of ketamine, which is some consider it psychedelic. It's like a dissociative. I've used it in my own healing, to use the book Trauma Alchemy as the curriculum for a retreat. So it's like a CAP Trauma Alchemy retreat, where we can work with individuals in a small group setting to help them work through that trauma alchemy and do their inner work with the assistance of ketamine or psilocybin and the assistance of a therapist in a very safe setting, so people can take it to that whole next level. Because as I wrote in my book, that's what I ended up doing at one point in my healing journey, was I turned towards ketamine and psilocybin in safe therapeutic ways in order to kind of break through these walls that talk therapy wasn't getting me through.
Right, right. Now, I like that this book served multiple purposes, both in, it's almost like to create that book about the past. And a lot of people, when they write their memoir, it's kind of like, okay, it's a closing of the past, it's an establishing of what was, and then they kind of leave it behind and, okay, now I'm going to focus on something else. But what this book effectively does is it walks so many lines. It has so much balance between the past and the future for yourself, for what it is that you've talked about and what you want to talk about, what people know you for and what you want to be known for. And a lot of people, I notice, get that wrong, where they're known for this one thing. They have this brand, right? And the brand, of course, is what people think of you. And then they'll, well, I'm interested in something else, so I'm going to talk about something else. And then their following is just like, what? Why is she talking? What is that? What? And there's not been that proper laying of the groundwork. Oh, I understand now why she is so this. Now it makes sense why she's talking about this. And you're kind of seeding the ideas amongst your audience for other things, frankly, that they can do to work with you, right? So I always tell people that a book is one of the things in business that you can do that nothing else does, right? Now, you're a yoga teacher extraordinaire, and most people know that I'm the most Google ghostwriter in the world. So when people seeing this video are like, wait a second, putting two and two together here. Is she one of his clients? Might be the thinking that they have. And a lot of people are, oh, I don't want anybody to know that I have things going on behind the scenes. Stay out of my kitchen. But here you are chatting about some of your experiences, working together. So what was it that inspired you to want to partner up with a professional, and that professional being me, for Trauma Alchemy?
Yeah. So I always knew that I wanted to write this book, but I have a lot of other things going on in my life. I'm a mom, I run a business, I manage a team, I run the household. And when I heard of you as the celebrity ghostwriter, I was like, okay, he's gonna understand me too. So if I talk to him, he's gonna understand that I'm not just like gung ho on this one thing. I've got lots of things on my plate. And I felt comfortable knowing that you would get me in terms of um, that I've got a lot of bricks that I'm holding right now, and that I really do want to get this out. Um, I wanted to work with you also because I'm not a writer. So of all those bricks that I'm holding, of all the responsibilities and the hats that I wear, writing is not one of them. And I wanted to get my story out, but I didn't want to just have a book out there that's just like a rambling of me trying to put my story together. When you and I were talking and doing our interview calls once a week, it felt so natural to be able to put everything together. Like all of the words in that book in Trauma Alchemy are my words, but just almost reorganized so that it fits the structure of a chapter within a book, so that everything starts to come together and make sense. I wouldn't have been able to do that on my own. I mean, maybe if I had studied for years on how to write a book and how to format a book and a chapter and have everything come together, sure, but I don't have that time. I don't want to spend that time doing that. So working with you was a relief in the sense that, one, a book was written very well. Two, it was in my own words, my story. So when I read it, I hear my voice because it was my voice. And then three, other people are able to now receive my message without getting caught up in the ramblings or the defaults that I might have in my own storytelling abilities.
Thanks for sharing that. Now we didn't just do the manuscript and I said, okay, here's the Word document, go figure out what to do, from that point, right? To the ghost writing, we added the ghost publishing experience. What was that like for you to have not just a Word document, but like a real book, a physical, tangible, finished product?
So the ghost publishing experience was almost better than the ghost writing experience. And
That's high
that's
praise.
a lot. That's a lot. That's a big thing for me to say, because the ghost writing experience was massive. I mean, we were meeting once a week, an hour, having these really great conversations, me telling you all of these stories of this one area of my life and how it ties together with this lesson that we discussed and what we wanted the chapter to say. So the ghost writing experience was incredible, but the ghost publishing experience, I'm like, how do people not know that this is a thing? Because I would not have done that. It was big, but your team has it so systematized that I felt like, okay, we're good. This is good. What do you need from me? Okay, sounds good. Like, it was very little stress. And when I talked to some of my friends who self-published or friends that have gone through publishers even, but didn't get the service that I received, they talk about that part of the process being the most stressful part of the process. And I can see why, because when you're working through, all these different publishers, Do you call them publishers, like the Amazon and
Yeah,
the?
those are kind of like your online retail shops, platforms, people call them distributors, and there's also the wholesalers behind them, and then there's the configuration, and then there's when the reason we call it ghost publishing is like someone else is doing the work and your name is on it. Well, the publisher of your book is Sarah Beth Yoga. So when people are like looking up the book, oh, who did this? They find themselves now in your funnel
Right.
for your existing business. And that's one of the things that we like to do is we want to give this book every chance it can to create economic value for your business. And that's just one little thing that we do. It's like my publisher of my book is ghostwriting.com because what's that? And then now we've got free traffic, right? And it's like little things like that that people might not think of. Oh wow, you could do that. Wow. You don't have to like make up a new publisher name, but you can use the name of your existing business and like assign the barcodes and ISBNs and the publisher's cataloging and publication block. And people are already falling asleep as I'm talking about this stuff behind the scenes. It's really important. It's just really boring and confusing and chaotic. And there's lots of pitfalls. And what we like to do is we like to just, okay, turn away from that. We'll take care of it. We'll pave the road. We'll solve the problems. We'll put out the fires. It sounds like you certainly enjoyed not having to put out fires.
It would have been paralyzing with the overwhelm and learning, I mean, the ISBNs and all of that, like all of that is overwhelming. And I would not have done it that way if I had to do it myself. I would have just been like, okay, like one place, we're good. But because you made my book available on like 12 different retailers, my global audience has more access to the book. And that was huge. I didn't realize how big that was going to be until people from, Germany or India were saying, "Hey, I want to see the book. Can I get the book?" And it's like, "Yes, you can. Here are the different retailers you can get the ebook from." And you can, maybe Amazon's not available where they are, which seems like, why wouldn't it be? But that was a problem that we were running into. And then your team answered that really quickly of like, here are the other places they can grab the book. So it was very, very helpful. I was so glad that I had both the ghost writing and then the ghost publishing. And
That's
I didn't
wonderful.
even realize it.
Thanks for sharing. I have one last question. One last question, and that has to do with the longevity of your book and the multiple uses. So I tell people that the book publication date is 1 day. Your book launch period is 18 months, and that's during for a year and a half after the book comes out. You want to make sure that you're sharing reviews and asking for reviews and promoting the book and making sure people see the book and they give away a chapter free. Anything you can do to get people into the book so that you can have this entire season of your audience, the ones that you have and the new ones, the incumbents and the fresh faces, they understand your story and they get to know you quickly, and they don't have to take years to get to know you. All they need are a few pages and $20. And now they know your entire life story. So there's immense tangible value in that experience for the newcomers and the veterans alike. But then I tell people, that's your book launch, that's your book publication, but your book's legacy should be 20 years. Should be 20 years. So as you think now, a few months removed from the release of the book, and you're thinking about this great pivot and these retreats and other experiences, what does long-term look like for this book? And what are the ways that you have decided and are thinking about using it and gaining value from it in the years to come?
So I love a good biography. And I love learning more. If I meet someone or I see someone online and I'm like, I like what they're doing, I like who they are, how did they get that way? And that to me is what my book can offer to people in years to come, 20 years even down the road. Because what I'm telling people is this was the story at the beginning, and that this is how I became who I am now. And maybe 20 years from now, there's a part two, but I think that that's what I can provide with the book years and years down the road, is that people who meet me, people who work with me, and people who might be inspired by what I do or impacted by what I offer might want to see a little behind the scenes. They might want to lift the veil. They might want to see that, like, maybe I wasn't always a successful, happy person, and they want to know more about that. And I think that the book can have that impact on people, even if they're not trying to do the work with the trauma alchemy portion of it. But similar to yoga, you can pick and choose what works for you. And then sometime later on down the road, you might read it again and it might impact you a whole different way. So that's how I see the book continuing in that legacy. And as I lead these yoga retreats where I'm infusing the yoga with the trauma healing and perhaps even with the ketamine or the psilocybin, that book is still going to be an opportunity for people to go even deeper into the lessons that I teach in an everyday basis.
That's fantastic. So you've got this book that has come out this one time and it's going to pay dividends for you for perhaps decades to come. That's great.
Yes. I was going to say, I think it's going to pay dividends, not just monetarily, but in that emotional connection that I'm making with the people that I'm working with in years to come.
And that's the best way to say it. Thank you so much, Sarah Beth Yoga. Check out Trauma Alchemy, available from all of the major retailers, not just in the United States, Canada, but worldwide.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.